So we're here with George Bolling. Recently, cousin of mine came across a Facebook group that had some pictures along US 23 highway, and came across this picture of the Bearded Beauties, which is a Lions Club, and he sent it to me and said, "Hey, check this out. We've got questions about it." So it's a pretty neat picture, and my dad is actually the driver, and we're sitting here with the one and only, and figured we'd get Dad to talk a little bit about it, about the Lions Club and what all was going on in this picture, some of the people in it, some of the things they'd done, what they did.
So tell us a little bit about the day the picture was made, Dad. What was the picture being made for?
The picture was being made mostly just for promotion, you might say, promoting the Lions Club. Even though the Bearded Beauties was not actually a program of the Lions Club, we were all the Lions Club members. And different ones went at different times, and they went over the years. And one of the towns, the cities that I went to were, I went to the state convention in Richmond. I went to Chicago, I went to Atlantic City, New York, and San Francisco, and Nice, France. And I met a lot of people, and they were really nice and surprisingly nice for that matter. I don't know, the first time we went, we'd all get together and had talk, going how things were going, and get ready. We let our hair grow and our beard grow for 3 months without being trimmed or anything. And we had an old moonshine still. We usually ran a little bit off, and so
one of the stories you told us about, you went to New York. Tell us a little bit about the New York trip.
In New York, we got in New York at night, and the fellow who owned the automobile was sick and he couldn't go. So I was driving the 1911 Ford, T-model Ford. And so I parked it on Broadway. And the next morning, they called me early. Said, "You like to get down here and move this car?" And I said, "Why?" They said, "You got Broadway blocked." So I went down, and all these people were standing halfway across Broadway looking at the old car. Not just the car. We had animals. We had a coon dog, and we had goat and chickens.
So you all just left the goats, chickens, and stuff in the car while you all went to your room.
Yeah.
And so when you all went down the next day, people were all gauding around the car.
Right.
And let me interject real quick. The car that you took up there, could you tell us how y'all came across that car?
Well, my friend, he and his brother-in-law owned a car dealership in Dorton. And this woman called him one day and said she was cleaning out her garage. And there was an old car there. If he would come and get it, he could have it. So he didn't know what it was. So he went up and he found out it was a 1911 T-model Ford. So just to make it, I guess legal, he gave her $1 for it. And so he didn't have much to do to the Ford to actually run it. And so they took it to Richmond once. Most of the time we put it on a trailer and take it to where the convention was, and we get it out, ride it in parade. And all that.
And was it New York the first trip it went on?
No, it was probably the state convention was the first, I guess, that they went. I didn't go on that one.
But you said the main reason they did it was to take it for the parade. You all would go through the parade, right? So tell us some of the other things when you all were in New York for the New York trip. Tell us some of the stuff you did. And you say you went to one of the shows in New York and they put you on TV?
Yeah, I went to the Jack Parr show, a friend of mine. He was here visiting tonight. show host, and they put us. We'd been in the paper the day before, and someone recognized us, and they had us to stand up, and we were introduced to the crowd on the Jack Parr show.
Did you have your overalls and all on?
Oh, that's all we ever took. That's all we wore. Our luggage was the same way. About to come, we held together with bale hay wire, and old Rogan shoes, and crop jugs for a moonshine, and old cap ball rifles, and shotgun that was bent to shoot around the corners.
Yeah. Now you said that year that at the Waldorf Astoria was where the Virginia delegate was held, and then you also told me there was also like different countries would have hospitality rooms, and you met a guy that you got to be good friends with that you saw at a lot of these conferences. Who was that?
That was Carlos Estavo. He was from Puerto Rico, and he was very large in the rum business. I think I was told about 80% of the exported rum out of Puerto Rico came from his family. I met him at their hospitality room. Got very well acquainted with him, and Carlos sent us a case of rum down to our room. Also sent us the fancy sombreros, which was real nice. And I saw him on 2 or 3 other occasions, and it was just a fine gentleman.
He was trying to get you to come and stay with him some, didn't you?
And he tried to get me to come and stay a couple of weeks with him, but I never got to. And I had another fella went on a trip to France and tried to get me to come to Peru and spend a couple of weeks with him.
Now, you also said one of the cities you went to was Chicago. Tell us about the time you tried to set the still up in Chicago. I know you mentioned one time when you were in Chicago, you did set a still up right there in the city of Chicago.
Oh yeah, it had been in the paper that we were going to run moonshine off. You know, we had some good mags, and so anyhow, we didn't know it. We didn't know it, but we set up directly across from the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
You picked a great spot.
So somebody called them, and so they got on us, and we called senators and congressmen and everything else. We never could get any thing done to stop them. So they sent a man over, and an agent over, and he was talking to more or less the leader of our clan, I guess, Charlie Daniels. He said, "Here you all going to run off some moonshine." Charlie said, "Yeah." And he said, "No, you ain't." Charlie said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "No." And he pulled out his credentials, you know. So he was going to make it just pour it out. But that time, and then Charlie left. And they called me back and told me to delay him as long as I could. So I told him I'd send somebody. He's too heavy to carry, it's too heavy to work. I said, "Let me send somebody get a bucket, and we can do it that way." He said, "All right." So without the man seeing me, I told him not to come back. So I sent one other one and then told him the same thing. So when I tried to send a third one, he said, "Nobody else is leaving here." But by that time, we got the camera people there, and it went on Associated Press. They carried it. And so after we got somebody there, and we picked it up and carried it over, we put it out. But we got the Lido Award that year.
The what award?
The Lido Award is an award given by the Lions Club for promoting the Lions. And there was only one other club in the world that got it that year, and that club was in India. So our other club at home, we got the Lido Award that year.
Now, is this the same, talking about the moonshine and everything, is this the same time when you were sitting on the curb drinking and the cops came up and told you that was against the law?
I wasn't drinking, I was sitting on the curb, and I had about a half-gallon crock jug. That was in Washington, D.C., that was. I on a trip to coming back maybe from New York, or Atlantic City one, and these two cops come up. I was sitting on the curb, and he said, "What are you doing, buddy?" And I said, "I just resting a little bit." He said, "What you got in that jug?" I said, "A little shine." He said, "Don't you know that's against the law?" I looked up at him. I said, "Against the law?" Anyhow, about that time, somebody shot a big firecracker, and those two policemen wasn't supposed to be in that area, so they were getting out of there fast. So they took off running, and I took off running right behind them. When they got to their police car, I jumped in the back seat. They said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Take me to my hotel." They said, "We can't do that." I said, "Yeah, you can." They did. They took me to the hotel.
Now, a quick tangent, just talking about this picture and this image. Well, the first thing I noticed when I came across this image is this is the same image that we have some glasses that apparently were made. It's the same picture. I'm not sure. That's probably about the same year these were filmed, which was, when we say all this, mid-40s, 50s?
The 60s, I think.
60s. That's kind of interesting. It's a little glasses, North Virginia, home of the Bearded Beauties. We got a few of them. And did you say, do you know who the person who got these made? Or?
Yeah, Warren Honeycutt was the man. He was into novelties at that time. And so he had come up with that idea. And so he gave me a set of them. And of course, he had them to sell. He was at that time, he was in the business of novelties.
While we're at it, looking at this picture, I think some people were curious online too who some of these people were.
All right, the man laying down here,
Charlie Daniels.
Charlie Daniels. He was sort of the leader of the group, very active in the Lions Club, and a very good upholding citizen.
And why does he have that big spoon or ladle with
Well,
him?
if you don't see it,
Moonshine?
but there's a crow sitting on his hat. It's hard to see. He always had a live crow that sit on his hat. And so when he was in Miami one time, he was up on a large diving board. And of course, he had no intention of diving off, but he finally lost his balance and fell. On the way down, the crow flew off his hat and lit on some of it on the lady's hair who had purple hair sitting around the pool.
And who's the guy here with the guitar?
That man, it was sort of he was the pappy of the bunch, that's what I saw. That's Darby Breeding. And he was from Kingsport area, I think. But he came over and lived a long time over in Norton area. And of course, that's be under the wheel. And this gentleman here is Ralph Rasnick.
With the bent shotgun?
Mm-hmm.
And what was the point of what?
That was to shoot around corners.
Shoot around, okay.
And this here was Paul DeMore. No, I think this might have been Paul DeMore, but I'm not sure. I can't check for sure on it. That might have been Glenn Teasley, this one here.
And A.J. Lawson.
A.J. Lawson, this gentleman here.
So tell us a little bit about the trip when you all went to Europe, when you went to Paris or Nice or wherever city. When you went to Europe, tell us about that.
Well, flying over, we flew with BOAC, and prior to going though, a gentleman who was a curator for the museum in Big Stone Gap met me on the street one day. He said, "I hear you're going to take a trip to Europe." I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Are you going to spend any time in London?" I said, "Well, don't know." He said, "Well, if you do, you need to go to the Bolling Museum. It's just outside of London." I said, "Well, I never heard of it, but I said, if I get a chance, I will." But I only spent about 30 minutes in London, and we had to take back off, and we landed at the Orly airport in France. And we were going through customs, and I was carrying a mongoose box or something. And I ran into one lady in Tennessee who said her husband had one of them.
And I think you can actually see that, or at least one of the mongoose boxes here in this photo. I noticed it's hanging off the back. If you look at it, it says mongoose box on it.
Well,
Tell everybody what a mongoose box is.
a mongoose box, is about 3 foot long and about 1 foot in a rectangular shape, and half of it, it's got a partition in it, and then at the bottom it looks like a little rat hole. A fur is tied to a wire that you can just hit with your finger and make that tail shape. The back part is covered with chicken wire. So there's nothing there but just some shavings in that compartment. The other compartment is covered over with a spring-loaded door. Attached to that door is a foxtail about 2 foot long. Maybe 2 foxtails hooked together, I guess. Anyhow, I was carrying the mongoose box through the airport terminal. This man came hauling out and said, "No mongoose, no mongoose." I kept trying to explain to him that it was just a joke, but I didn't speak his language very well. Anyhow, Charlie said, "Show him the mongoose." So I laid it on the floor, and there had a huge crowd around. I mean, a huge crowd. And so I got him down real close. I said, "Now you got to watch fast." I said, "He's fast." I said, I said, "You can't get down real close." I said, "He'll go in and out. You can't hardly see him." I got him down real close. I sprung that lid open, and that foxtail come flying out of there. He did a somersault backwards. Everybody in that whole place started, I laughed at him so much. I went through custom with 3 gallons of moonshine, and they never looked at him.
So is there anything to share about the D.C. story? I know that's another place you said you went. Anything else to tell there about the going to D.C.?
Well, we lost it. We had a skunk that we found going into as we were on the way to New York. But we stopped at Grand Rapids. And just outside of Grand Rapids, this mother skunk ran across the road with 3 little ones. Darby Breeding said, "Stop, stop, stop." Said, "Get one of them." Somebody said, "Let us sting us to death." He said, "They've not got one bit older when they're young like that."
Which is a total opposite.
So Moose DeMoore went out and got it. The rest of the way into Grand Rapids, he had it right on the outside. They put the skunk in with the rooster, and the rooster like him went crazy. Finally, we got in, we had him deodorized. But on the way down back, we stopped in Washington, and we lost the skunk in the air conditioning unit. We had to get the help in the hotel to come and get the skunk out of the air conditioning unit. Then we lost, we had going to New York, we had a guinea. And I told him when we stopped to water the animal, I told him, I said, "You're going to be careful with that guinea." I said, "If you give him a little bit of crack, he'll be gone." Well, sure enough, he got out in New York. We never could catch him, so I guess somebody ate the guinea. I don't know. We never did get him back. But, also, I'm trying to get checked in. We were actually staying in a hotel in Monte Carlo. We rode the train every day going to Nice. But I was trying to get checked in. I wasn't doing too good. Finally, this gentleman stood behind me and said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Well," I said, "if you can talk to this lady," I said, "you can." I found out later he spoke 7 languages fluently. He was from Peru. And his estancia was 1,000 miles from Arequipa. And Arequipa was his mailing address. And he said that one year he raised Arabian racehorses. Because he said you never know when they're going to be fast enough to race until they're grown. And said sometimes they have to dispose of them. He offered to give me an Arabian horse. I said, "I'll charge you $25 to detrain him." But I figured it cost more money than I could afford to get that horse in the United States, so I didn't take it. But he did invite me to come and stay with him a couple of weeks. He said they raised everything they needed, with the exception of the spices, on their estancia, as they called it. Said he'd take a vacation one year, and then his wife would take one the next year. Both of them never left at the same time. And he ran around with us a couple of days in Paris. Finally, he said, I think he wasn't for real. And he left. But I don't know. Like I said, we met a lot of people. We were up in the hotel room. Doctor's friend of Charlie's was there, and so he asked me if I was going to the Follies. I said, well, I doubt if he let us in the way we were dressed. He said, they don't care anything about your hair or your beard. He said, you're about my size. He said, I'll lend you a suit. You ought to go see it while you're here. So John Harmon and I, another guy loaned him a suit. We went down to the Follies, which was only about a block and a half where we were staying. And John went up to check on the prices of the seats. He came back and he said, what kind of seats do you want? I said, I want the best seats in the house. I said, I don't figure I'll ever get to see this again. I want the best seat in the house. He said it was $8.50. Because I imagine it's probably $80 now. Anyhow, we didn't have a theater seat. We had a big Chippendale chair on the front row. And they put on one terrific show. Beautiful. And the woman that emceed it, every time she came out, she had a different Victorian gown on. And her voice was just almost hypnotized you. And they put on a terrific show. And then after the well, let's see, one day we went to the Louvre. Charlie, of course, he'd been to the Louvre before. He was standing out on the street holding a gourd we used to drink out of. All of a sudden, people come by and started dropping money. Finally, this couple came up and the woman took her husband's picture with him, and then he took a picture of his wife and him. And finally, he spoke a little bit of French, you know. He said, I don't know where this guy's from. Finally, Charlie spoke up and said, where are you from? He said, I knew you had to be an American. And he said, little town, you wouldn't know where it's at. He said, I might. He said, where are you from? He said, Coburn, Virginia.
So there you were in Paris, and the person you run into is from Coburn, Virginia.
Yeah.
Right next to Norton.
It's 11 miles from Norton.
So anyway, we got about a little over 23 minutes on this video. Let's go ahead and
shut it down.
Yeah, we'll shut this one down, and we'll probably film some more. So check out the YouTube channel, and we'll have more stories of Dad talking about these. So thanks for listening.